listeners. In this episode, I've got Iain Harcus, a renowned, well-respected skipper, been fishing many years, based in the Orkney Islands, and Dr. Jon Kristjansson, a fisheries scientist from Iceland. Hi, guys.
Hello,
Hi.
Jim.
Hi.
Jon, if I could ask you to, let's start. When assessing fish stocks, how important would you rate the value of speaking with fishermen and studying nature?
What's the value? It's invaluable. I was once discussing in the pool with some friends about fisheries. Then a man sitting near us, he asked, "Can I take a part in this?" Yes. I am a captain of a trawler here. I've been for 40 years on a trawler, and I have something to say. And by that way, we talked a lot, and I learned a lot. It's like lighting a bulb when you screw it in, and there comes a light. Two people deal their experiences.
How do you feel about that, Ian, as a fisherman?
No, I've always felt that that's an important part, that the scientists could work together with the fishermen, but I don't think we've done that very successfully in the UK. I don't know if the scientists don't trust what we see or what the problem is, but it certainly has been a problem. The last scientist meeting I was at many years ago, it was to learn how the fish stocks were, and some of the fishermen start voicing their opinions, didn't agree with the scientists, and were told that we weren't here to advise, we were here to listen. So I never went to another meeting. But it's encouraging to know that, but it's not a surprise to me that it should be working closer together, but it's difficult to get that, I would say, in the UK anyway.
How do you feel about that then, Jon? Ian been told to listen and not advise.
I remember our first scientists. They went out with the trawlers. And one, especially our best one, he was sitting on a deck with his microscope in his hands and examining cod, what they ate, and sampled everything, and talked to the fishermen and men. And yes, and they liked their experience, and he respected them very well. But later on, they got research ships, the scientists. They couldn't be on a dirty trawl. They needed a special ships. And some say that this was the worst they were given because they got out of contact with the fishermen. And since then, they never listened to them and talked to them. And I remember especially there was a scientist aboard a trawler with an experienced skipper. They were on the way to Greenland, and he said, "Oh, this Greenland halibut, that should be protected. We are overfishing it." He turned slowly around and said, "Mr. Scientist, what do you know about Greenland halibut? I've been fishing it for decades." They knew nothing about it. It was everywhere. So this is the and I was recently on a meeting with scientists, and they didn't listen to anybody. It, not even me, which is as I'm a scientist, and I'm just I'm not the right opinion. You see, I make them difficult. They ask silly questions and so on. So they are completely out of all which is reality. They only have their models. They have their surveys, and they calculate. And if it doesn't fit, they change the formula. And we are here, same thing, nothing happens. Every fish stock that should be increased by protection has decreased. Catches have decreased on all species in the North Atlantic because they are overprotected.
Overprotected.
Yes, Look at the cod you get in the trawls in the North Sea. You are always fleeing.
Fishing is now becoming the North Sea cod avoidance, not cod catching. That's for sure. The guys who can avoid it best is probably the best guys
Yes.
now. It has changed
How, how,
dramatically.
how, how genius is that? This is completely silly. You can't overfish. Let me say that now. You can't. Because the fish is smarter than the fisherman in the end.
I know. In my lifetime of going from seeing, quite healthy, various sized fish, but on the haddock now, we saw it starting on the west coast. They started taking a long time to get fat after spawning, and it would take instead of a few weeks, months to fatten up. And then we see a situation that there's not been much fishing west of Scotland on the shallower fathoms that the haddock would normally be. It's just predominantly small fish. And that's really sprayed. I feel that's sprayed right now into the North Sea as well. The haddock just don't seem to be growing, and there's no bigger haddocks in among it, which is different from the big ear class back in around about 99 or 2000. There was a big ear class then, and that fish did grow at various different at various speeds. So you had a selection of sizes out of that 1 year class, but that's not happening anymore. You just have a vast amount of small fish that's not growing. And it's just exactly what you warned us years ago, John.
Yes. Is it now at the size of a herring?
The size of a herring.
Now, is the haddock at the size of a herring? Big, not bigger than herring. Spawning.
Probably, yeah. Yeah. There's haddock spawning at that size. Yes, that's correct. There's undersized haddocks now that's spawning. We see undersized haddocks with.
Yes, well, 20 years ago, I told all of you in a report on everything that haddock in the North Sea was starving.
Yeah,
And that has been true all the time. It is starving. It doesn't grow. Overcrowded because they increase the mass size and all you know. And in Norway now, it's a problem. In North Norway, they say they are fishing up all the baby haddocks. But it's a strong year class and they don't grow. And people are blamed for destroying the stock, but it needs to be harvested.
yeah,
But try to tell them that.
I know. It's a big problem.
Why is this so? The fishermen have been listening and respected the scientists most of the time, even if they don't listen to the fishermen. And all they say is rubbish and against their experience. Why are they allowed to continue with that?
I do not know. That's a very good question. We ask that plenty, but there's no answers. Nobody tells us why this fish is not growing. Scientists comes on board the boats and do discard trips, which measures the discards and counts that, but that can quite often not be undersized fish now with the mesh size. It used like years ago it was undersized fish, but now it's not so much. And the one trip we had scientists away with us, we had a real problem that trip trying to avoid cod. And we actually had to cut the trip short because we just couldn't avoid everywhere we went looking for haddock, cod was in abundance. So we had our quota. We had more than the quota probably for the week. So we just went in and landed it. And I said to the scientist at the end of the trip, "Now you see the problem." And he said to me, "But you know where to catch the fish." And I thought he was on board the boat. He saw the stress that we were under trying to avoid it, and he still thought we were trying to catch the cod. So it was very tricky. Get the scientists to see what we see and feel. That's for sure.
Yes, but why can't they see that there is so much cod? much more than they think, because the computer says no. But why shouldn't you catch the cod when it is there? It must be a wrong policy, and they even don't care about the growth of the cod. How is the growth of the cod? Nobody tells me. Nobody says that. Everywhere where you reduce fishing on every stock in the North Atlantic, it leads to catch reductions. What they promised should come if they allowed them to govern this, it hasn't come yet. Catch less now and catch more later is a lie,
No, I would
right?
agree. I would agree.
This is very strange in our world that this can happen.
I know.
But look at the climate business. This is crazy.
I know it is.
Now Europe is yeah.
We have a situation now in the monkfish that the monkfish was cut for, I don't know how many years it was cut, but some of it supposedly science based and some of it precautionary. I think the quota was cut around 60% in total, with the expectation of more cut this year, and all of a sudden they're recommending a 200% increase. And we don't see swings on in the sea and the catches like this. I think it proves that there's something that's fundamentally wrong. That that monk quota can be cut, and then all of a sudden 200% increase. It just doesn't make sense to what we see. Because the monk stock doesn't fluctuate, so fast as like a haddock stock, for example.
No. But think about this blue whiting and the mackerel. It's been caught over advice for many years, up to 30% every year, and it's the catch is always increasing.
Yes,
Why is that? Because they need to be caught in order to increase the growth. The mackerel was growing very much slower in the recent year than it was before, and they catch much more than they are allowed. But it's the stock increases.
I know.
Why? Why doesn't anybody say to them, there is something wrong here, guys? They think and they presume that fish are evenly distributed in the sea, and they trawl at the same spot every year
Yes,
and get less or more and more. It is like if you were catching a bird, a ptarmigan, and you went to the same spot every year and you shoot 3 shots in northeast and you count how many you catch. It's the same thing.
yeah,
They are not on the same spot everywhere, all the time. Now this is sad. This is. I've been using most of my life in convincing people that they are wrong. But I'm a special man. You see, he is alone.
I know.
He thinks he knows everything.
But what you say to us all these years ago is the closest to what we see when we're fishing. You know, we fished west of Scotland for many years for haddock, and it was all good sized, and there was plenty of boats fishing it. And then they came in with a low whiting percentage, which made the fishery more or less not viable because probably half what you're catching at times was whiting. So you couldn't work with, a 2% bycatch, for example. So anyway, that area west of Scotland hasn't been fished for many years. But now the whiting has increased, and 2 year ago maybe we tried that area, quite about 100 miles of it really, and it was all the same problem: plenty of fish, but no size at all, just small fish, size of more or less
look at
size
look
of
at
gold.
huh?
So that's what the
I see the Rockall area. There were hundreds of trawlers in the old times and all the time. And they now they are nothing except small, overcrowded fish to catch, and that's bad thing they think. Same was in the Faroes. They 60% of the ground is not fished in a year. It's not allowed. It's protected areas, and the fleet is gone. The fishermen is gone, and everything is in a mess because scientists, when they couldn't push quota on them, they reduced the fishing days and closed more areas with the result that there is almost destroyed the Faroes fishery in the Faroes area. They have to catch in other countries in the Barents Sea, Greenland, and so on.
I know.
They are systematically destroying the fisheries in the world.
Well, I would tend to agree with you with what we've seen over the last 30 years. It's a worrying thing when the fish don't grow. But I would say the cod and other fish are growing okay, but the haddock is not. I don't know why that would be. Is the cod does he fight for his food better?
They have a different feeding opportunities. I mean, the haddock is a bottom eating fish, but the cod is more the cannibal and predator fish. It eats all other fish species, but that doesn't go to the haddock,
Yeah.
except they eat very small fish.
Yes. Yeah, that would make sense.
I mean, there was one. My friend was fishing for with a vad heter snäll with hand line, and he got one very small cod, and he didn't have time to take it off. He hoped it would, when the bait got down to the bottom, it would disappear. But then next he pulled it, it was a big cod eating this little one on the hook.
Yes.
They eat each other.
Yeah.
And there is a fantastic fishery for cod now because the cod stock is hungry. And they take the bait very eagerly.
Okay. Yes. No, that would make sense. But most of the UK fleet would be trying to avoid the cod because it's very easily exhausted just in a bycatch, let alone trying to target it, you know?
But why don't you join in a force and catch cod and bring it to land and say, to hell with you?
Well, the quota would be exhausted and you would be tied up for the rest of the year.
No, continue to fish.
That wouldn't happen here. That wouldn't happen here. That's for
No,
sure.
no.
You know, you can't risk your business with that. You just wouldn't. We just can't do that. We can.
I know.
You know.
I know. Here in the villages here in Iceland, nobody which is in government or positions, they don't criticize the quota system
No.
because then they will be sacked. They will be sacked.
Yeah.
The quota mafia here governs everything, even the government.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is as bad as this.
I know.
And it is all on now very few hands, and the people in the villages are starving. And the small boats have been saving them for the last few years. They are allowed to fish, I think, 60 days, no, 48 days in the summer, in the 3 months, but they are allocated quota. And they got now 10,000 tons, and that was finished a week ago.
Okay.
But the season is allowed to fish until the end of August, but there is no quota. They increased the quota by 2,000 tons, will last 2 weeks. And they are trying to kill the small fishermen. because they take a tiny bit of the or quota owners have.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
I know it is. But I think the feeling across here is that we have to have some sort of system, and it's going down the quota system. So, how do you change that? Unless you, and I don't know. It's been spoken about changing it to days and stuff, but I don't know. I don't have the answers to that. It's just the same. It's probably the same as Iceland. It's big business, and there's a lot of people investing a lot of money into it. That's the thing.
And people and the scientists seem to have forgotten how it was before. In the Icelandic grounds, every nation could come and fish up to 4 miles. And there were Russians, Belgians, Frenchmen, Spains, British and German trawlers in certain years. They made 4,000 fishing trips to Iceland.
Okay. Yeah.
And everybody was trying to destroy the cod stock and the old stocks, but it was always a good fishery all the time. Then we got the 200 miles limit, and then we could start to govern the catches because they wanted that. Result is that we are now at less than half the catch that was made when they tried to decimate the cod stock.
Yeah.
You can't fish it out. It's impossible.
Hmm.
It's been tried for centuries. Nobody has fished anything out. Can you name it to me? Has anybody caught up a fish?
No, probably not. Well, we thought we were going to do the code because there was not much code around for a few years, but it certainly came back healthy. There's a lot of areas where we used to catch small haddock and small whitings around Fair Isle and places like that. It's all code now. It's in that grounds.
Yes, but species they change place and time.
Yeah,
Someone is coming up, others are going down. This is natural.
that's right. The most worrying thing that I think is happening just now, the haddock not growing. That's a big worry because that's the biggest quota. It's the haddock, and to be honest, there's not the processing capacity ashore to handle that small haddock. So there's plenty of quota, but it's not worth taking ashore because there's not the shore side to handle it. So that's another problem.
You have to, the solution of the small haddock is to catch more of them, but then you have to find a way to process them or melt them or sell them to Africa as a dry fish or something. But it has to be caught
I know,
in order to thin out the stock. Look at what happened in the Baltic Sea. It's been closed for all fishery for 3 years.
I know,
After they put a quota and increased the mesh sizes, they destroyed the stock. It was starving, small individual, 300 grams, 5 years old. It's not overfishing, as they say.
no. You can see that's happening with the haddock here, though. We can see that. And it started further west, I think, and now it's moved into the North Sea.
Have you been so long a fisherman that you know of Cushing, the biologist Cushing? He wrote in 1970 that when that most what was called overfishing was in reality underfishing. And this is especially true for countries that have extended their fishery limits because then they can control and make still more underfishing.
Yeah, okay. No, I haven't heard of that guy. No, no.
No, no, no. He wrote that in a book and said that it was the worst problem that was people thought underfishing was overfishing because you only got small fish. Okay, you have killed all the one, but they don't grow. Don't make you hungry.
Jon, when we had one of our earlier podcasts, didn't you mentioned something? Was it some work you were doing in Africa? And there was one of the big lakes, and there was one half of it was managed, and the other half was free for all.
Yes, yes, yes. The stock was very similar on both sides, but the catch was many times much on the one side than the other, where it was allowed for free fishing with all gears. That was in a man-made river in Zambezi River down there. I don't remember. I'm so old. I'm forgetting names.
Yeah, but
that
you
was
said that the stock on one side was being controlled,
yes,
and on the other side was they could
free fishing.
free fishing,
Yes.
and that kept up far better than the side that was
Yeah.
being.
Oh yes. Oh yes. We know this from lakes. We know this from nature. You know it from sheep or cows or hay and everything. Reindeer. Overcrowding is very bad. Now they are taking over our salmon rivers. Well, they found out a few years ago and they needed more spawners. So all fish are now released. The result is a quarter of the catch it was before, because the production of the river is going down because of overcrowding. All food for the parr, the young salmon in the river, are up-eaten in August. And they don't grow anything from August until late May. And most of them die during the winter. I have done experiments to reduce the spawning stock above falls. Then we can release a certain number of females. We released 3 females per kilometer. On the area below, there are 30 females per kilometer. And the parr in the fall are 5 times bigger when the spawning stock is light, but they are fewer. But the first year, after the first winter, there are much more surviving where there was light spawning. Other ones are almost disappeared from hunger in the winter. They have not eaten enough before the winter comes to survive. So they have 90% mortality, but much less when they are well fed before the winter. This is proven. But now, if you kill a fish, you are looked upon as a criminal. If you take a salmon home, they are taking over. And who is predicting this? Sellers of the rivers, managers of the river, which say to foreigners here, oh, we not kill the fish, so we are protecting it and playing with nature. Our river is very good. We don't kill the fish. Okay, then they come back and say, oh, lovely, interesting. One of them is Radcliffe. You know him? He's one of the richest men in Britain. He has bought 5 or 6 rivers in northeast Iceland. What's the purpose? The purpose is saving the North Atlantic salmon stock. And how does he do it? He releases all the fish to get more spawning. Nobody asked for the results. The result is that in Special River, which is he has now made his river, and fishing only a few days in the summer, when they were free fishing with worms and flies and spoons and everything, the catch was for many years 300 to 500 fish each year, and everything was killed. Now he caught 16 2 years ago and released them all. And through the counter in the river, salmon counter, there went 200 fish. What's the result of his experiment? Worse than nothing. They were catching up to 500 fish, killed all. You see it every river over the country. It's when they started to release the salmon, the productions go down and the runs go down. Once I was in Ireland, I told you that before. I called to Ireland last year. They were allowed to fish in the sea with drift nets. And I was trying to help them to say that this was not the right thing to do. And they said, now we taken all nets from the rivers and all nets from the sea, and now salmon runs will increase. I said, no. 4 years later, I read in the fishing news that despite all nets being taken up and all fish released, there was a very bad salmon run in Ireland. Same for Scotland. The reason for the downwards going of salmon is overspawning, not shooting predators, and not allowing all baits only fly and release fish. That leads to disaster. That's how we are going to populate of the earth, not give them food.
I know.
Sorry.
No, it's interesting to hear you. A lot of people here blame the seals at the mouth of the estuary for it, but it's maybe more than that.
Yes, it's more complicated than that. The belief that man can affect animal stocks by catching them is not true in most cases, especially fish.
We would also see if there's an area that is fished hard, the stock in that area does get cleaned up. So I can think on a few situations of that, like west of Shetland, the 1 year that we didn't have a Norwegian deal, so most of the British boats weren't fishing there, and we came back from Rockall, and it was a very prolific, like ling and mixed fish, really, that the longliners and the gillneters from Norway would normally have been fishing on. That year was very good with them not there, but it's never been the same since. But that's more on ling and that type of fish, rough fish.
I mean, okay, this is very complicated, but you have to be realistic when you look at this data. It is not overfishing all the time, but that's the only explanation is overfishing.
Yeah. No, I know, but
Always.
nothing else came in on that grounds. It just looked
No.
a bit more like a desert, than anything else. It was a total different look from the year before, but I guess you can, a certain area for certain type of species, it can be overfished as well, as far as we see that different areas with fish if there's been a good fleet on it.
Okay, we can't generalize, but I once met a captain, and I was thinking about what makes fishing grounds. I went to this guy who's been fishing for all his life on a trawler. I said, do you remember any fishing spot or fishing ground or bank, or what you call it, that you have overfished or cleared out? He thought for a moment, and said, no. What does make a fishing ground? What attracts fish is food. If you fish a spot or an area for most of the fish, then the food has time to grow up. And in that area, there will be more food than other areas, which will attract fish from other areas. You take it, more food comes up, and that's how it repeats itself. If you stop this, there will be no fishing ground there. Can you recall this?
Yeah, no, we can see instances that some very prolific areas has not been fished, and there's nothing much there now. Like the Papa Bank, the obvious one, that the Grimsby trawlers fished hard, and then local trawlers, I suppose. But the cod quota came, and we just had to avoid the Papa Bank because it was predominantly cod. But I don't know. There's still a cod there at times, but it doesn't produce the fish it used to. That's for sure.
Yeah, but you have to remember that before, in that time, the mass was much smaller and the thrush fish was taken away. But now, thrush fish and other species and small ones, they go through the masses and compete with the big ones.
Oh yes, that's for sure.
So the worst thing you do is increase the mass size.
Yes.
I remember in 50s there was a meeting in Britain which one of our scientists participated in, and it was they were going to increase the mass size in the North Sea to protect the fish and let it grow a little bit more. The conclusion of the meeting was if you increase the mass, you had to triple the fishing rate. So they didn't do it then. But then they did it later. And North Sea is now on Sahara. It's a lot of fish, but nobody is allowed to fish.
No, that's true. That's certainly true as far as cod goes. There is big areas of the North Sea that most people have to avoid because of the cod. That is true. And then the problem is that the big haddock quota is hardly financially viable, because if we all went and caught the haddock, which is not growing, you would get nothing for them.
No, therefore I say I said it that 20 years ago, instead of giving money to decommission and destroy the boats, you should invest the money in methods to market these small fish anywhere for human food. The Russians, they do it. They block freeze a 20 centimeters cod. And that's food for the Russians. They saw it into pieces and put it into a pan and eat it with bones and everything. But because this is food. The Russians have saved the Barents Sea by using small methods and catching small fish and processing it. So the money should be spent on this. How can we make money on food out of this instead of decommission of the fishery fleet?
I think it's labour that's the big problem as far as I think there is moves. There is some of the bigger factories putting in fish filleting machines, but the price that they're speaking about, it still makes it hard financially to make it work for the boat, I would say, if it's just clean haddock anyway. So it is difficult.
Now, I don't, of course, not know nothing about details, but what I saw on board the seiner I went with in the North Sea, it was incredible. They were pulling up baskets with their hands from the last and sorting with hands and taking it along the deck and by hand and everything. We have mechanized all this. Had then doing it easier for the fishermen to take the fish into boxes and so on.
A lot of the newer boats are much more mechanised now, that's for sure, that side of it. But what we've never done, in the inshore waters, we've never gone into the freezing of fish or anything like that. I would say a lot of the boats are quite efficient at gutting the fish and cleaning the
Yes,
fish
yes.
and that side of it.
Yeah, but this was 20 years ago. You see.
Yeah, but you also have some boats that don't have the bigger crews that can do it. But a lot of the guys do have the bigger crews, but that crew has to be paid, and if the haddock is worth nothing when they take them ashore, it's a lot of work for nothing. That's the big problem when there's no better sized haddocks through it. So you have a huge stock of fish out there that's not growing and not worth catching. It's nearly at that stage.
Yes, this is the result of management or mismanagement.
No, I remember you saying that 20 odd year ago, but we certainly can see it now.
It seems alarming, Jon, that you did this tests in Peterhead
Yes.
over 20 years ago, but what I saw then and listened from you, we're seeing the exact same right as far west as Rockall now. So you can tell us, would that be the same cause as when you found it in the North Sea?
Yes. Yes.
I was looking at some fish in Scrabster. It was caught by people just out with rod and line, just out on the bay in Scrabster. They came in and they had a box of haddock, small haddock. And the real surprise for me, we're talking about late June, early July. Our spawning cycle, they usually spawn maybe January, February.
No.
They're out of condition March and April, and they start feeding again and fattening up in May. That's where the cycle used to be. This was in late June, and the fish were as thin as if I was looking at fish in February and March.
You should take pictures of this just for record.
Could that be anything to do with the colder weather this year? Could that have
No.
an effect?
No. It is only hunger. Everything is eaten up. Did you look in the stomach? There was probably nothing there.
Yeah.
You see, our scientists said at this meeting 2 months ago that the cod was on the average 25% lighter than last year, the same year class. And the food content has gone from 2% of body weight last year to 1% now. And I asked them, aren't you worried about this? What do you think we should do? By meaning that the only thing to do is to catch more. They said, we have we are not quite easy about this. But they do nothing. They should double the quota. But that isn't suitable for these quota owners because they ask for lack of fish on the market to get up the price. Then they have their quota and they can fish it and have a good profit. But if you increase the quota, the price would go down and they would have to catch the fish instead of hiring it out. So they are against increasing the fisheries until they have pulled out all the small boats. Then they will ask for more. This is criminal act.
I don't think that's quite the same with us, is it, Iain?
No, I don't think so, but it could come that way maybe, but no, we're at a different level, I would say.
We are much smaller.
Yeah, but we're also, I don't know what your figures is for cod quota compared to the UK, but the UK cod quota is just a fraction of what you be speaking in Iceland.
Yes?
I think so anyway. I don't have the figures, but
We are now at 200,000 tons. We were at 500,000.
well, I think the UK is maybe around about 10,000 ton or something, maybe 20 now. Maybe it's got back up to 20. Maybe I'm not sure, but it's a fraction.
In the 80s, before they started, there were 250,000 tons.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's what we're down at now. That sort of figure. So, and I know, I think I heard a figure of the UK eats around about 300,000 tons of cod. I think that's right. So it shows you how much we need to import.
Remember, we had the whole British fleet on our grounds.
That's right. A far bigger fleet than what is now.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Oh, yes. I saw the harbour in Blackpool. It was incredible compared to my father's pictures.
Yeah, I know. It's unbelievable that.
He was there in the war selling fish to my...
And do you think this hunger in the haddock is nothing other than too many fish in the sea? There's no other reason for it.
Yes, it is the experience everywhere. I mean, I've been working very much in lakes. You see it. You can change the lakes by fishing it out. You can change the face of the lake. Fishing. If you stop fishing it, go to the same again. You have to fish hard all the time with small messes.
Yeah. I know, it's interesting. And for sure, the areas that is the prolific areas for the fishermen, the same areas being fished every year. It's not new areas, for example. People say about the seabed being damaged and this and that, but it's the same area that's producing plenty of fish, although they're not growing, or the haddock is not growing.
I can tell you one example that proves this. There was a team of scientists in Canada. They went to a small lake populated with Arctic char, and they went out there and fish all the fish from the lake. I'd say they pulled out, it was only a few hundred square meters or something, it was very small. And they put up nets, and when they stopped catch fishing, they said, we have taken all out of the water. They did this every fifth year for 25 years. When they came back after 5 years, it was all exactly as they came 5 years earlier, and there were fish of the same age than they thought they had caught out. Fish learns to avoid gear, and it is approximately 50% of the fish you can take. Then the fish has learned so much that you can't catch them. You only catch half of the population, even if there is nothing more for you to catch. So that happened 5 times, 5 years interval. It was always the same when they came back. So speak of fishing out or overfishing. Nothing such. And it was proven 120 years ago by a Norwegian scientist. He said, when I tagged the fish, it was easy to catch the first 30%, but I never could be able to catch more than half of the tagged fish. You can't fish them out, even if you think that you have. I mean, this is just an experience.
But you also, Jon, in the past have said that for all they say about banning trawl, you feel trawl is not that efficient a means of catching.
They they estimate that it takes 20% of what is in front of the trawl. Latest estimate that the trawl is catching only 20%. And if you go again, you catch another 20%, then you get less and less because the fish learn. And I've seen experiments. They're going under the rockhopper and under the wings and over and out. So experienced fishermen looked at a video of an underwater trawling. He stood up after 1 hour and shut the door and said, "What the rubbish we have under our boats. Everything is going from the trawl. We are catching only a fraction of the fish which is there." But this is a secret they were not revealing. They have no pictures now of the efficiency of the trawl. Scientists don't like it. It's a bad thing, even if we think it's good. So they don't catch everything.
So when we're hearing of overfishing, it's actually that the fish are escaping.
Yeah. They were called Hoover trawlers in the old days, the Russians. And they hoovered up the fish. That's not true. I mean, the Russian fleet in the Barents Sea were 600 trawlers some a long time ago. And there were 3,000 trawlers fishing in the Barents Sea, big trawlers in the 1950s, 60s.
I know for a fact a lot of people would say that you can overfish, but there's nobody can explain the haddock situation that's happening in the North Sea now. There's nobody else that can come up with a theory for that. Because I don't think that's ever happened to such an extent before that this fish is not growing. So it'd be very interesting to hear if somebody else that doesn't agree with your theory, what they can come up with for the reason they're not growing.
As you are here, please send me a few scale samples of haddock in an envelope here. I'll analyze it.
Okay, we can do that.
Haddock scale. You take the slime off and dry the fish, and then you take backwards with a knife and put it in an envelope, and no plastic, no nothing. It has to dry in an envelope.
Okay, right.
Send me.
Yeah.
I'll give you my address.
Yeah.
So I can analyze it. I have data from all the times, and it showed that herring-sized haddock I found in Aberdeen and it was 5 years old.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. I fear some of that fish are getting older and not growing now, I think.
But measure the length of the fish and the sex and put scales into an envelope and send me.
Yeah, that'll be no problem.
I'll do it.
No problem. We'll do that. We can do that with a few different sizes. But I remember going back to maybe 2005, I questioned the scientists because they said the only haddock that was there was from the big ear class in 99. And I said, but they're all different sizes. I says, we have a range of all the sizes in this haddock. And they did prove to me at that time that all that haddock came from that ear class. There were a mixture of sizes, but not now. Very little bigger ones now.
No, but send me scales. I like that.
Yeah, no, that'll be no problem. We can get that.
The thing that really shocked me, Jon, from your conversations before, when you got that you called herring like small haddock, and you did that survey and you aged it, and you said it was between 4 and 5 year old.
Yes.
And we're probably about 300, probably maximum 400 grams, maybe 300.
Yes.
And you said if that fish of that age was in Iceland, it would be over 2 kilos.
Yes. But not always. Now we have had problem with the small ones because there are catch limits and everything.
We used to get a lot of bigger haddocks from Faroe boats when they were coming down fishing the Faroes and landing in Skrapster. But anytime we see them now, almost like it's in the North Sea, it's just small haddock.
In the Faroes?
Yeah,
Okay. And you have no long liners coming to your scrubsters now?
no.
Faroes, no. They have destroyed the fleet in Faroes.
There's still a quota. Some of our Scottish boats have a quota in Faroe, and there will be some better size through it, but there is small haddock, which if I go back say 30 years ago, we never ever saw that small haddock coming from the Faroes. Never.
That fits all to this theory underfishing. In up to 1975 or something, the Scottish trawlers and British were into the fjords in the Faroes, and they fished all they could, and the catch was between 20 or 40,000 tons. Now they hardly catch 10,000 tons, but there is nobody fishing.
And there's so many areas that we can't fish in Faroe. Vast areas we can't fish. Closed areas.
Yes, oh yes, oh yes. 70% of the grounds are closed all year.
Okay. I thought it is quite vast.
The other issue we have here, Jon, when we talk about the MPAs, Marine Protected Areas, and
Yes.
politicians in our government recently, they had to backpedal because they got a real resistance, and they tried to make them highly protected marine areas, but they didn't get away with it. But we even talking to a nicey scientist on a podcast, and I asked him, what do you think of closed areas? Now, icy scientists in this country almost get the blame for the situation we're in and if there's any cut. But I asked the icy scientist that, and he said, look, you can't just close an area and leave it. He says it's got to be monitored. You can't just go away and leave it.
But you know about the place box in the North Sea. Place box.
Yeah.
It is north of Germany,
Yeah.
and it was protected because they caught too many small plays, and they thought that if they stopped fishing, they would go out to the North Sea and get bigger. There is nothing there now.
Yeah.
It is one of the big failures, and they don't learn from it. That's the bloody point. They don't learn, and now the areas first they were taking, the fishing area was taken for oil pipelines, boreholes. Now it's taken to windmills.
That's right.
That's where they are trying to get the fishermen away.
Well, this big area's going to be taken for the windmills now. So that's more closed areas.
Yeah, I know. That's their goal.
The worrying thing, and well, lots of worrying things, but it seems quite unbelievable how there's none so blind as those that cannot see, is a term we use here. But for all your discussions there about this situation with overpopulation and that, Jon, and you go on about history and go back and get quotes from scientists going back 100 years, I can't understand. They don't seem to listen or even learn from it.
Or read it, not even read it.
Yeah.
Yes, no. I know better than everybody. It is so.
You're coming up against them and disagreeing with them because they're not agreeing with you. But there's people like Iain there. Well, they're coming up against them because they're making their businesses unviable if they continue.
Yes. Everywhere the same.
Do you think that a similar situation, and maybe you've answered this, I'm sorry, the situation that you found in the North Sea, Ian's talking about the West Coast and Rockall and that, are you reckoning that is the same thing continuing, the same problem?
Yes. When I was there 20 years ago, I was studying the fishery stories of all these grounds, west of Scotland and everything. All the same symptoms. But another thing which is also worrying is that the scientists, they don't recognize the parameters that you see in the fish. If you see a thin, small fish with black liver and full of parasites, there is only one explanation: starvation. They can't even see it. They said once, our people noticed that the fish was very thin and are full of parasites. And they didn't know why. They didn't understand the message. I have been in many, not hundreds of lakes, yeah, maybe. And you see, by taking few fish, you can see how the situation is by seeing how the body shape is, how it spawning condition and color of the meat and the parasites and species they are eating. You can say it's so and so here. You have to read nature. Look at the trees in your garden. If they don't thrive, what do? You cut them, clip them, and then they grow up again. I mean, you have to be able to read what nature is trying to tell you. If fish are small, hungry, parasitic, it's starvation. Nothing else. It's only one remedy: catch more.
But we had a situation here before the bird flu came last year, maybe the year before. There was a lot of bird flu, so the birds were dying with bird flu. But before that, they were dying with starvation. And it's just the same as what we see with the haddock. But you can guess.
Yes?
You can guess what got the blame: overfishing.
This is, in fact, very simple. We have had the same birds dying. Why is that? Because they feed mainly on sandils here,
Yeah,
some species. And who is eating the sandils? That's the haddock
that's right.
in the sand. Both eggs and a lot of the time sandils are buried in the sand.
Yeah,
Therefore, if you open a haddock, the stomach contents is always black, which is what? Sand, when they suck up the sandils and other creatures from the bottom. They eat up the sandil stalks and the birds starve.
yeah,
That's not overfishing, that's underfishing of the predator on sandils.
exactly. But
It's all fits.
it does all fit, but it's quite interesting how the green people, as they call themselves, are so wrong. It's the worry untrained.
Yes. Now, this is a big problem in the world. I don't know how we solve it. We had a criticism of the system and fishing less and protecting starving fish. That was in 1983. And some journalists said to me, now there will be a change in the fishery policy after this. I said, no, it takes 30 years to change. It took 30 years to change the shape of the mudspot stock. 30 years to change it. It takes time to change it. I said, maybe I have to lift the lock, the cover of my coffin to see changes.
Yeah.
I mean, it will never come.
Well, nobody seems to be learning about it properly. That's for sure. There's nobody that I don't hear it being spoken about here about this lack of growth in the haddock. I think the same as you. It's a very, very dangerous thing to ignore.
Yeah, send me scales, please.
Yeah, that'll be no problem.
Of some 10 to 20 fish of different sizes.
Yeah. We'll do that. No problem.
Do you see a consistency, John, with the haddock situation, what Iain's explaining and what we're discussing, and the amount of cod there is? Does that
What do you say?
there's so much cod about, but they can't fish it because they have no quota. So there's abundance of cod. And this haddock situation, does that...
But I showed then that there were a competition between the same sizes of cod and haddock.
Does it follow the fact that there's so much cod and yet there's a serious problem with the haddock?
I can't tell you. I can't. I have not seen the fish or ages or nothing, or food or nothing. So I don't know. This is just what I am talking about is general. You have to look at the feeding conditions and everything. I'm so far away from you.
Well, I don't think any fisherman can understand when there's such an abundance of a species and they're proposing cutting the quota.
We have talked about that before. No. They sent a squadron on me to kill me when I wrote all this about underfishing at that time. They would put an armada of scientists to criticize me.
It would be interesting if that same people could explain why the haddock is not growing. It would be very interesting to see what they say.
Have you asked them about that?
No, I haven't, to be honest. I don't go to the meetings now, so.
Please do it and get a written answer.
Yeah, I think that's maybe a future podcast, Jon.
Yes, it was nice talking to you. Only my problem is that I don't understand so very well over this net. Okay, but we managed somewhere. How?
I would just like to thank you all so much.
Thank you very much. I'll contact you when I get the scales. I will send you pictures of them.
Yeah, no, we'll do that.
I read the scales and I take pictures.